In these uncertain economic times, it's easy to be worried about protecting your wealth, your hard-earned savings, and your family's financial future. Plunging interest rates, the devaluating dollar, and political unrest constantly threaten what you have worked hard to earn and all that you own. That's why now it's more important than ever to protect your assets and have the money you need to make your dreams come true. Welcome to the Global Wealth Fortress Report with successful global entrepreneur and wealth preservation expert Joel Nagel. Joel's helped thousands of people just like you protect what you have so that you can make even more and make your every dream come true. So, sit back and enjoy Joel Nagel's offshore expert advice on how you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.
Hello, this is Carib Clews. Welcome to Joel Nagel's Global Wealth Fortress Report. This is the weekly podcast where you hear from America's #1 asset protection attorney about how best you can protect your assets, which is vitally important right now, as each of you knows. And this week, Joel, you are in Portugal, right? So let's talk Portugal.
Great. It's good to be with you, Carter. And yeah, I am. It's kind of late here, but it's always good to be with you. And I love Portugal. It's a country I didn't really know that well till about a decade ago when my oldest daughter decided to do a semester of college. She studied abroad. And while she was abroad, my wife and I went to see her. And, it sort of started a love affair. We are now residents of Portugal. It's one of the sort of plan B or plan C places that we have. And we've really gotten to know the country well. And I'm here this week. My youngest daughter has her school break from Austria, combining it with a little business.
Good.
And yeah, it's the beautiful weather here. It's early spring. The cherry blossoms are blooming. It's 60s. It was almost 70 degrees today. So it's a really nice time of year to be here.
That's fantastic. I've got to ask you a question that I think ever since I was in like 10th grade, every time I've looked at the map and saw Portugal, I've said to myself, if I ever meet a Portuguese, this is the question I'm going to ask them. How in the hell did a country the size of my thumb end up owning half the known world at one point? And what is it about those people?
Well, historically they were great explorers. They were shipbuilders, explorers. They were incredible military thinkers. Nobody has ever been able to conquer Portugal.
Oh, really?
Napoleon tried, and the Spaniards tried, and the Portuguese used a strategy where they just retreated all the way to the Atlantic coast, which for them is their western border. And when the enemy's supply lines got, really weak and they were low on supplies and food, then they counterattacked and, demolished them. Meanwhile, they had a tremendous shipbuilding industry, and literally, as you know, they were the earliest explorers. They explored all over the world. And you're right, they have, even today, you find Portuguese. It's one of the most spoken languages in the world. Portugal itself is just a little country, but Brazil is about the size of the United States.
That's right.
You have other countries around the world where Portuguese is the primary language, like Angola and East Timor. There's a lot of countries. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but
you did a pretty good job. You did a pretty good job right there. I forgot.
Macau, for example, and right there on the doorstep of Hong Kong, that's a Portuguese colony. So
remarkable. So let's talk about. I'm going to say something that you may say you disagree with 100%, folks. This show is. Joel and I have been knowing each other a long time, so we're very comfortable with each other. So what you see on this show is what you get. So I'm going to say something you may disagree with 100%, but I got to be honest with you. I think the way things are in the United States now, particularly with the confiscatory taxes, 40 to 50%, that's going to continue rising, the outrageous inflation. I think anyone who doesn't at least consider getting out and moving offshore really needs to have a serious talk with themselves. And I think Portugal might be one of those places that they consider. What do you think? I mean, you've spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, moving offshore in and of itself doesn't do away with your tax responsibilities, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the US is one of the few countries in the world that taxes you based on your citizenship, not based on residence. Most other countries tax you not on citizenship, but on residence. So for example, if you're a Frenchman and you're just fed up with high taxes, you know, you could move to some Caribbean island and the French aren't going to tax you at all.
Wow.
That's not the way it is with the US. The US is going to continue to tax you, but there is something called the foreign earned income exclusion, which eliminates tax on the first about $107,000 that you earn. Now, in the past, it was very difficult to move outside the country and still earn income, you know, because the foreign earned income exclusion doesn't apply to investments. It doesn't apply to retirement, pensions, Social Security, any of that stuff. It has to actually be earned income. But now in this digital nomad age that we live in,
Yep.
you know, virtually anybody can, you know, I mean, I think if there was any silver lining in the whole COVID, you know, affair that we've had the last 2.5 years, people realize that, you know, they don't have to sit in an office to be able to do the job. And if you're working remotely, what difference does it make if you're in the suburb of your home city or you're halfway around the world, right? I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
You know, commuting's commuting. I mean, when my daughters had their school closed down in Europe, my wife and I decided to move back to the States for a few months. And, you know, my daughters weren't happy about getting up at 2:00 in the morning because that's the time they had to get up to go to virtual school. But they were able to do it, and people are doing it with employment as well. So, yeah, I think in that regard, Portugal is a strong contender. I'm really quite amazed, and maybe it is because it's a small country. It has an entrepreneurial edge to it. There's a lot of like energy, vigor, however you want to call it. I mean, you know, for example, crypto. I know we talked about that last week.
Right.
The Portuguese have basically taken the position that Bitcoin, for example, is like money. So if money goes up and down in value, you don't get taxed on money, right? If the dollar all of a sudden next month is worth more than the euro, it's not like we pay a tax on that. But you know, the US treats Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as a good, right? So it's the same as gold. So if I buy it today and then I use it in commerce tomorrow, or just outright sell it, I'm going to pay capital gains tax on the difference. Portugal, no, there is no such thing as capital gains tax on cryptocurrencies. So you're seeing a lot of young people who are in that, you know, genre moving here, starting businesses in the crypto space, miners, people starting ICOs and, you know, initial coin offerings, which is kind of like startup companies in the crypto space. So you have that at the young end of the spectrum. And then people my age, our age, I should say, and older, you know, there are a lot of programs.
I think I fall under the older.
For investors and retirees. I mean, so they're really trying hard to attract people from all ends of the spectrum. And it seems to be working. I mean, like I said, you walk around here and everybody has a little extra spring in their step, and you know, things are moving here.
Let me ask you this: if you went into a store there, I know that in El Zante, the development that you and Mike Cobb are building over in El Salvador, you can actually buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin. Can you actually purchase stuff with Bitcoin, like go to a store in Portugal?
You're starting to see more and more of that. I won't say it's as widespread as El Salvador. Remember, El Salvador came out in September and said that it's legal tender. So merchants must, I mean, there's some exemptions given for people that live in very rural areas or don't have the ability to have like little crypto terminals or like the equipment they need. But essentially, 85% of all merchants in El Salvador accept crypto. It hasn't gotten to that level here, not only in Portugal, but the rest of Europe, but it's growing and it's certainly ahead of the US. I mean, I just came to Portugal from Austria and in Austria, I would say more than half the hotels you can pay in crypto. A small number of restaurants allow you to pay in crypto. So it's just gaining momentum. I think it's a trend that's going to continue.
I think, Joel, in a paper I read the other day, it might have been on Yahoo News, they said something like 8 to 10% of transactions in Portugal are now with Bitcoin. 8 to 10%. I think the US is around 5 or 6, some way down there. Yeah.
And again, with the favorable rules and laws in place, it's attracting people here who want to continue to, build that infrastructure. So I met with a very successful lawyer here yesterday in the crypto space, and he pulled up to have lunch in his, $500,000 over the top Lamborghini. And I commented on his car, and he said, what good is all this wealth if it's just little, electronic bits in your computer? He said, I want to enjoy my money. So it's funny because he and his wife are expecting their first child in May, and I asked them if there was going to be room in the back of that thing for a car seat. I didn't see any room for a car seat, but you just see, I mean, Portugal historically was it was kind of like the ugly stepchild of Europe. It was neutral during the wars, right? Both Hitler and Churchill supposedly had plans to move their government in exile to Portugal should their country be overrun by the other, which was interesting. There's an area outside of Lisbon they called, it's like Monarchy Row, because all of the former kings and queens of Europe, as they were deposed, the King of Italy, some of the German kings, they all have their big mansions and estates in an area of town called Cascais, which is just maybe 10 miles outside of Lisbon on the coast. So, but it was always kind of held back, right? It was kind of ostracized from Europe. They had essentially a dictator for many, many years.
What was his name? What was his name? Doggone it. When you said that, oh man, maybe it'll come to me. It was years. It wasn't as long as Franco next door in Spain.
Yeah, Franco was Spain, but I'll get it for you. We'll talk about it again next week, and I'll have the name for you. I was just reading about it not long ago, but it's not coming to me right now. It's been a long day. My day started at 4:30, and now it's about 9 p.m. So it's been a long day. But Portugal, it's on fire now. I mean, I think one of the reasons it pushed hard to join the EU was so that it would never go back to the kind of dictatorship and military type government that it had. So they're very progressive. They're very very much for European integration. But they're, like I said, they're also a smaller country. They're more nimble. They could move quicker. And the gap between Portugal is one of the poor European countries and say rich countries like Germany or Switzerland. That gap is rapidly closing. So, and I think their policies, like their Bitcoin policies and their policies to attract retirees. I mean, what retiree would not want to be here? I mean, when I walked around the other day here, it's not quite like Florida, right? It's not that warm, but it's about the closest thing that they have, at least in continental Europe. Right. So, walking down one of the little boardwalks here, all the coffee shops, they're all filled with, retired Germans and Brits, and they're they're sitting around enjoying the sunshine and they're spending their money. And the Algarve has 330 days a year of sunshine. So, it means not over 90% of the time you're going to get sun. And, it's February and it's in the 60s. So, what does that tell you? It might get in the 50s, but it really doesn't get any colder than that. So it's a great place for people to live, spend money. It's great for entrepreneurs, great for place for people to, enjoy their wealth, like the guy with his, with his Lamborghini. So
let me ask you this. You mentioned the entrepreneurs and you mentioned it several times. What is the atmosphere for entrepreneurs there in the U.S. now? It's like after 5 years, barely 10% of new businesses make it. And it's because of the licenses and the permits and the taxes and government. How is it there? Does now I interviewed Giovanni, whom you know, in Nicaragua a couple of weeks ago, and a good friend of mine, a businesswoman in Honduras, and they both said, we don't have that. Our government encourages entrepreneurship. What's the story for especially for the young people who watch it? I know we have a lot of them. Being able to go to that country and start a business without government doing this,
Yeah. It's a mixed bag, and to be very honest with you, it's a mixed bag. You have things like we were just talking about crypto. There, it's very hands off. I mean, the government's trying to encourage people to come, and it's as long as you're not doing anything illegal, you can come and pretty much do what you want. So a lot of the startup industries, the tech industries, investment areas are really attractive. Some of the older industries tend to have more bureaucracy. It's kind of like just goes along with the historical baggage. I noticed that there's a lot of bureaucracy around the tourism industry, which I think they need to do a little more to unshackle some of that, because I do think it's holding them back a little bit compared to, for example, Spain. Spain's very progressive when it comes to the tourism sector. So it's a mixed bag, but the nice thing here is, again, good weather, low cost of living. The wage rates are pretty low here still compared to Northern Europe. So if you're going to start a business and hire people, you're going to get smart, educated people at a much lower cost than Germany, France, and those countries. And in the areas where I have had to work through bureaucracy, it's there. You have to work through it, but probably you're not going to do it by yourself. You probably need to hire a decent local lawyer who can kind of help you steer through it. So if you're hearing from Latin America, and I think I generally tend to agree with that. In a lot of the developing countries, they've just thrown regulations and bureaucracy out the window. That's not the case here in Portugal. You do have hoops and hurdles you have to jump through, but I wouldn't say it's oppressive. Somebody showed me in New York, if you want to open a restaurant, for example, in New York, there's a manual you have to fill out, and I kid you not, it's over 400 pages of data and information and rules and regulations, before you can even open on day one. I don't think it's anything close to that here. So.
Well, you and I both have homes in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, a liquor license for a restaurant is $600,000. What the heck? To serve a bottle of booze. So it's got to be better in Portugal. So for the young people who might want to start a business, it sounds very welcoming. How about older people who moving there on a fixed income? Let's say I think the average income for Social Security is around $2,300. Could you live in Portugal on $2,300 a year, a month?
Yeah, absolutely. You would have to be cognizant of what your income was and where you lived, right? So, for example, I talked before about Cascais outside of Lisbon, where all the ex-royalty lives. You're not going to live there. Could you live here in the Algarve where I am now? Yes, probably not directly on the ocean, but maybe a 5-minute walk from the ocean. I mean,
nice.
You can find very reasonable housing. I'm a big fan of the Portuguese islands, for example, Madeira, the Azores. Portugal spends a lot of money subsidizing the importation costs of basic goods that come in every day on barges from the mainland. And it's really to keep the population there. If they didn't do that, you would have mass exodus of people, and they don't want those islands to become unpopulated. I mean, the largest Azorean island is San Miguel. It has around 100,000 people. But there are a couple, there's 9 islands that comprise the Azores, and a few of them have like several hundred people, and the population's diminishing. So they're doing a lot to keep the people there, and they have very low taxes. I think they don't levy VAT taxes on the islands, or if they do, it's at a much, much lower rate than on the mainland. They subsidize things. So, if you're looking for a mild climate and you want to be on an island, the other thing that's nice about the Azores, you get on a plane in Boston and you're there in 3.5 hours. I mean, it's only halfway to Europe. When I fly from, say Newark to Vienna, it's a 10-hour flight, and you just feel really, exhausted by the time you get there. But going to the Azores, no problem. If you want European culture, a couple years ago, we went one summer to the Azores, and right before we went to the Azores, we went up to the Cape right outside of Boston.
Right.
And we spent more time in traffic trying to get to the Cape than we did flying to the Azores. And it's the same geography, the same weather, same beach, same water, but you have a little bit more European flair. You've got the French pastries, and it's nice. It's a nice change. So yes, I think that I would say that 95% of Portugal is extremely affordable. It's probably one of the most affordable countries in Europe. You could probably be in some rural areas of Italy and maybe Greece, where it would be comparable, or some Eastern European countries like Bulgaria. But I don't think you're going to have the mix of weather, food, people, education, healthcare. By the way, the healthcare system here, if you're a resident, it's free. I mean,
Wow.
it's
wow.
And they have pretty darn good doctors. If you want to buy private insurance on top of the free system, you can do that. I mean, I had to get a test here a couple years ago, and they were preparing a bill for me. It was going to be about 30 euros. And then all of a sudden, I was giving her my documentation, said, "Oh, I didn't realize you're a resident here." I said, "Yeah, I have residence in Portugal." I said, "Oh, well, then it was like 70 cents or something instead of 30 euros because I was a resident." I would have gladly paid the 30 euros. It was, in the States, probably would have been $300 for the same test. So I didn't mind at all. But, for a lot of people, that's one of the big worries and fears they have, is that, hey, what if something happens to me? I need medical care, and it wipes out all of my resources. So I have some clients that are here. They're on, they're on pensions, they're on Social Security. They don't have tons of resources. That's one less worry they have living in Portugal.
Well, you know what? I'm glad we talked about Portugal, because I know everything I knew about Portugal. I said at the opening of the conversation, so which was not much. I do know one thing: Straussner, right? Straussner was the name of the president of Portugal, I think, for all those years.
I think he was president for like 50 years or something. It was
He and Franco. Yeah. It just came to, honestly, God, folks, I did not look it up. I think it was Straussner, though. So, Joel, thank you. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Excellent.
I know we got lots of other things to talk about, but it was fun talking about Portugal today. It's an easy thing for me to talk about because we really do love it here. And in the years ahead, we may even decide to apply for Portuguese citizenship. We'll see. We haven't really made that decision yet, but I think it's a wonderful Plan B country, and it's if you want to come and visit, and spend some time here, and you need somebody to help point you in the right direction, reach out to our office. We'd be happy to help.
Fantastic. Here we go. Nagel, let me hold up my sign. There you go. He just invited you, folks. So right there's the number. All right, Joel, thank you very, very much. This has been great. We appreciate it. Thank you so
Carter.
much, especially when it's late at night over there.
No worries. Have a great rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Outstanding, folks. Remember, this is America's #1 asset protection attorney giving you some absolutely incredible advice, and he's there on the spot. You are there. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. And we'll be back again next Thursday with Joel Nagel's Global Wealth Fortress Report. Thank you. Let's do, as I always say, let's do this thing. This is great.